passing on to her grandchildren some of the long-kept family treasures, a grandmother mailed a family Bible to her grandson. It was one of those great big ones, you know, that the family used to have, that have names and photographs and all kinds of things in the front cover areas, and they're very heavy. At the post office they asked, is there anything in here breakable? Only the 10 Commandments, came the reply. Tell me, how do you react when someone commands you to do something? Whether you choose to or not, whether you want to or not. Commandments are one thing, breaking them is another. I remember when I was little, the experience of being told by people much bigger than me to do something I didn't like to do or didn't want to do, and I wasn't about to do it. So I tried out the word no. Tried walking away. None of that really worked in the long run. If I could get away without doing it, I just wouldn't do it until I was discovered for not doing it. And so I'd sometimes argue and drive my parents up the wall, and a little crazy, resisting and asking a lot of why questions. Why this? Why that? Why do I have to? I remember when I was around 10, I was all set to attend the birthday party of a best friend, and including a trip to New York City, which for me was a great opportunity. When suddenly my plans went up in smoke, and that can be pretty tough for a 10-year-old boy. Especially when his heart is already set on something he wants to do. Instead, I was told by my parents that my family would be attending a meeting at the state capitol in Hartford, where my late grandfather, James D. Kimball, his name comes up a second time today, he was going to be named and recognized and remembered, among others, for his contributions as a former Connecticut state representative. Back in those days, I played serious piano, and for that occasion I was asked to play a solo. But I wanted to go to a birthday party. As a 10-year-old wanting in the worst way to go to my friend's birthday party and to New York City, I was in no mood to say yes. And so I argued with my parents, not understanding why I had to give up doing something I thought I wanted more. I carried the argument to the point of my parents' frustration till they finally had to say what wise parents sometimes have to say when they know what is best. Do you know what that is? When they're pushed to the limit of their reason, they say, because I said so. End of discussion. Did anyone ever have to say that to you? Because I said so? The words of my parents had turned into a command. Thou shalt, because I said so. Very different. I still had the choice whether or not to play a piano solo, but there was not much wiggle room left around the question of missing my friend's birthday party. The day arrived, our family was among several hundreds of people at the state capitol in the room where the representatives meet, my grandmother Kimball having a special seat right where my grandfather had once sat. I still had in the back of my mind the birthday party, the trip to New York I was missing as I stepped up to play my solo piece. But then as I returned from the piano to sit with my family, I saw tears of gratitude running down my grandmother's proud, smiling face. Something happened inside me. Something transformative. Seeing what this meant to my grandmother set me free from something I had been clinging to inside up until that moment. Suddenly I was able to let go of my frustration, my disappointment, my resentment, and my anger. It just melted into thin air. And I knew that my parents had been right in insisting that I be there where I was that day. When I saw my grandmother's face, there was all at once something much, much stronger that touched my life than my whim to be at a birthday party. I know now, as I look back, that the real reward that day that I had been feeling so negative about, that something that changed my whole experience from negative to positive, was love in our family, caring for one another. But it had taken a commandment from my parents to get me there, because I said so. I saw love in my grandmother's eyes, her tears, her smile. I experienced love when my mom and my dad gave me hugs. I experienced love when the people there applauded. I needed to be told, commanded if you will, what to do at the time, in that instance, by others who knew better than I the meaning of life's great and special moments. Likewise, long ago, God saw fit to make known to humanity some rules and regulations, some commandments to bring order to our lives together on this planet. In the days when the Ten Commandments in the Bible were first codified and written down, no one could imagine how large this planet was, how large it is, and what a struggle it would be for humanity to ever keep all of these rules, given human nature what it is. Originally accepted as God's word and rule of order for the wandering tribes of ancient Israel in the days of Moses, their leader, who gathered together these original 10 commandments. And for all of the years and generations that followed, the 10 commandments gave rise to many additional applications addressing questions of everyday life. All in all, the implications of the original 10 gave rise to 613 commandments in the Bible, 365 negative ones, thou shalt nots, because I said so, and 248 positive ones, thou shalt, because I said so. Did any of you ever have to memorize the 10 Commandments when you were growing up? Amen. Anybody? Tried to memorize the 10 Commandments when you were growing up? How many of you could rattle them all off right now? I won't make you raise your hand. How many times a day do you think about the 10 Commandments relative to things you decide and things that you do or don't do? How many break one or more of the commandments each day? I'll put myself on the spot at least. Reminds me of the story of Sunday school students who were asked to list the 10 Commandments on a sheet of paper in any order. And so the teacher with a chuckle read the clever response of one of the students, who listed neatly on the page 1, 12, 8, 5, 7, 6, 2, 9, 3, 11, 4, and 10. With some 613 commandments to keep track of, in the days of Jesus, there was a need to summarize them in a simpler way. And so it was that some strict religious leaders of the day, with a lawyer as spokesman, asked Jesus, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Being strict keepers of that ancient law, these leaders were far from pure in their motives for asking Jesus this question. They often tried to trap him with such questions, knowing that he'd get in trouble if he even tried to answer it. They often tried to trap him so they could use these answers against him. To their surprise, I assume, Jesus answered their question by putting God's truth in a nutshell. Instead of 613 commandments or 10, he summed them all up in 2. Essentially, 1, love the Lord your God. 2, love your neighbor as yourself. It's one reason why we have a Neighbors in Need offering all this month. And it's going on as our missions committee has identified it as our monthly mission project, is Neighbors in Need. It goes to help other people around us, far and wide and near. On these two commandments, Jesus said, depend all the law and the prophets. We need commandments from God in our lives just as we sometimes needed them from parents when we were children. Our parents sometimes knew more than we did because they loved us. They gave us some rules for our own good so that we would not wander into danger, hurting ourselves or harming others. God also loves us enough to give us rules to live by, for God surely knows infinitely more than we do about the meaning of our days. Because God loves us, the commandments of how to live a faithful life are given, helping to save us from wandering into danger. Looking around the world, it is obvious that we are at least as good at breaking God's rules as we are at disciplining ourselves to follow them. The people of ancient times, and even today, used to think that mere outward appearance of obedience to the commandments was all that was necessary. You could have thoughts that broke the commandments, but as long as you didn't act on these, you were okay. Jesus changed that way of thinking. He said, what is in your heart and in your mind matters just as much as your actions. If we're selfish inside, if we pretend to be generous to impress people, just to impress them on the outside, we've already broken God's commandment about being generous to others. Well, that's why love becomes the real bottom line for measuring faithfulness to God and to others, and why love of God and love of neighbor sums up the real goal for which all of the other commandments are trying to lead us. They're the commandments of a loving God. Just like my parents who loved me enough to show me the right thing to do one day when I wanted to do something else. In a way, the commandments of God are like a mirror. I can think I look like Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise, which I don't, but when I look at myself in the mirror, I see the truth. When we look at the commandments of God, they're like a mirror, helping us to see ourselves as we really are. And we only need to remember the two if we take them seriously and interpret them deeply and meaningfully when we apply them. When we take a careful, prayerful look, we see we fall short of God's will. We see in the mirror of the commandments of God that we fall short, have a long ways to go, have a deep need. That makes us humble when we know of our need to walk closer with God, if we ever hope to get there. I discovered years ago that life is much more than a birthday party I wanted to go to for following the whims of my day. Seeing the tears and smiles on the faces of those who loved me most showed me that life is really grounded in something infinitely more important and sustaining, namely the quality of love and the fellowship to which we belong, the fellowship of humankind, or in a church, or in which we fellowship, or serve people together, or in a diverse world where peace and justice need to be prayed for every day, because we care and we love one another. We have seen that passion in the life of Jesus. We're asked to try to do the same as he did. To love the Lord Lord our God with all our heart, our soul, and our mind. And second, to love our neighbors as ourselves. What do those commandments translate into you for today, tomorrow? What is something you can begin to do about it? Let us pray. Lord, the grace of your love blankets our lives with hope. For as many times as we have broken your commandments, sometimes in our actions and often perhaps even daily in our minds and hearts, you have repeatedly forgiven us and raised us up to try again and again with your help to arrive at a better place in all of our relationships, a place that will cause you to smile upon us, and a place that will brighten the days and encourage the lives of others all around. And in the world's wider family, we embrace your commandments to love you and our neighbors. Walk with us and talk with us. Show us the way as we pray in our Savior's name and rely upon your Spirit to guide and inspire us. Amen.